approximately 7:01. And roll call, please, Amelia.
Mrs. Zoney?
Here.
Mr. Morrison?
Pledge first.
I'm sorry?
You could finish that and we'll do the pledge afterwards. Go ahead.
Yes.
Oh,
I'm here.
Mr. Bedoin?
Here.
Mr. Pocock?
Here.
Mr. Lebenik?
Here.
And Chairman Leary?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, through April, under executive order, both Mr. Leary and Mr. Lebenik can vote at the meeting.
Okay, thank you. And just over the most important thing. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic, and one nation, with liberty and justice for all.
It's that time differential.
Number 3, public hearings. We don't have anything on that. Go to old business. I need an approval of the minutes of the November 10th meeting, please.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from the.
I make a We have a motion and a second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Aye.
One abstention. Okay. Now the number on that number 4, we have the approval of the 2022 meeting schedule. Does anybody got
Mr.
any?
Chairman, can we have the director go over them first?
Sure.
Everyone understands what we're doing.
Fine.
Okay, so basically, we in front of you, you have the draft of the 2022 meeting schedule for the Board of Finance. So that's page 1, the first page.
Yeah.
The second page would be the schedule of your budget workshops. So you'll be with the various departments in public hearings. The departments are just in there right now as a draft mode. We can decide on those later as far as the town departments go. But if you can look at the dates and make sure that these work for you, those are the 2 pages that you're actually approving. The third one is for informational purposes, which is the 22-23 budget schedule.
Okay. Anybody have any conflict with this? Too early to say. John or Joe?
No, nothing. Thanks, Ed.
Okay.
We will need a motion, though.
All right. I need a motion to approve the schedule as.
I'll make a motion to approve the schedule of the meetings.
Seconded.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. I need an access to the current financial state of the town.
Certainly. Upon reviewing, we're 5 months into the year, and reviewing the revenue versus budget, our prior year's taxes are $50,000 over budget. Interest on taxes are $50,000 over budget. Building permit and fees are $180,000 over budget. The town clerk fees are $400,000 over budget. I think they're selling everything in town here.
Or buying.
Both. Perma equity and interest is about $76,000 over budget, and our pilot program came in at about almost $18,000 over budget. As far as the revenues go,
You want to do the revenue? You might as well do that.
might as well do as far as the expenditures go. All the departments seem to be in line with their budget. There's no major issues that I can see at this time. And I haven't updated the capital projects, so hopefully next month we'll get that done.
John, Joe, anything?
No.
Okay, I'll need a.
No, thanks, Ed.
Okay. We got a motion on the floor, right?
There's no
Nope,
motion
no
necessary
motion.
for that.
Okay, sounds good. All right, number 3 under 5, review the capital budgets, projects in the budget.
Next month.
Next month on that, okay. All right, we're down to the subcommittees. Sewer Committee, Mr. Morrison.
Yeah, no meeting since last time, and the first meeting of the new sewer committee, which looks suspiciously like the old sewer committee, will be tomorrow, 4:30.
Okay. Public Works, Kevin.
We just leave pickups on schedule. mainly because there hasn't been any snow, so we haven't had any issues there. And they're still debating on if they're going to do a study intersection.
Anything, town manager?
No, I just thank you, obviously, to the Public Works Committee Department. The leaf originally didn't cooperate by bringing the leaves down, but once the leaves did come down, it did not snow. So we finished our second pass of Zone 2. We're in a process of the second pass of Zone 3, and then we'll do some spot pickups later.
Good. Okay, we're down to open space, and we had a meeting today. Most of that was talking about a couple of, we have the Leaf building down at Lewis Farms there. They're going to be putting the roof on that. Hopefully it'll be done before winter. The one at Grosky Farms there is going to be held off, I believe, this spring. And then executive session we had in. That's about it for open space. Self-insurance.
So for self-insurance, we have our claims for the first 4 months, and we're approximately like $660,000 below budget, which is good. And when you compare it to last year, we're $500,000 higher than last year, but that's mainly because people are doing, which a year ago, because that we expected that.
Yeah, right. All right,
And
Joe,
we
do you have anything?
And we have our next meeting next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
On Wednesday next week.
Joe, you have anything on the self-insurance?
I don't think that.
Okay. I'm trying not to forget you guys out there.
Appreciate it.
Economic strike, Tony. There's.
Economic strike. Well, nothing here either. Next first meeting of the new Economic Strike Committee is next Wednesday,
Okay.
4 o'clock.
All right, we'll move on to the Board of Finance subcommittees. Any reports? Investment Committee?
Nothing more than what Amelia talked about when she went over her revenues.
Okay, sounds
So.
good. And that sounded good. So, the Fire Commission. Neither one of us have been there, but we'll be getting back and. Board Communications. I'll start with Sue.
Nope, I'm good.
Tony? Nope. I should have really started with John and went to Joe, but it's okay. John, you got anything for us? Board Communications?
I do. I'd like to move up the Board of Ed. I know we don't have a lot of move them up, but I do have one thing. Today I got a call from our auditors to do, it's a normal fraud risk assessment questionnaire that they do verbally on the phone. But it seems like the questionnaire has changed, and they're asking the questions with a different, the questions have changed. Let me put it that way. And what I want to do is, I don't want to rush to put a new item on the agenda right away, but I'd like it, Amelia, if you can get back to us. They're asking me to assess the strength of the internal control environment, the effectiveness of our internal controls. And I opined and answered all the questions properly and in the affirmative. But in order for me and the board, in order for us as a board to be more informed, I want to ask you if you think that we should put an agenda item on here to discuss internal controls, so you can tell us, bring forth to this board as a governing board, what is the internal control environment? What does it look like? So we could have a chance to discuss it, because we're now being asked questions on it. So I don't need an answer right now, but between now and our next meeting, I'm leaning towards wanting to have it pop up on the agenda either quarterly or monthly, even if we don't talk about every aspect of it. But just an internal controls discussion or fraud risk discussion, if you want to call it in a broader sense, have it on here as an item where we could just talk about our control environment, what we're doing, and that way we could have discussion around it so we can answer the questions from a more informed position. That's all.
Let me add this. Did the auditors give you a list of the controls by department that they look to do control testing? Because
No.
we don't know what controls they look at by department.
Right.
So the only way to help us to kind of look to see how the departments are doing, it would be nice to know what they're looking at in the first place. Right, John? So I don't know if they do a control matrix.
Yeah, I mean,
well, they might have. Most auditors will have what they call a control matrix, and it will list the controls that they test, internal controls they test. And it could be by department. I'm guessing it's by department.
I mean,
and it's just nice to look at.
Yeah. Generally,
Not that we're
they
gonna
hit
say it's
the
right or wrong.
big departments, right?
Yeah.
The tax, the
Yeah.
town clerks,
Right.
the finance. Yeah, we can definitely discuss this.
Yeah, I mean, if it's
and
document they have, you
the
can share
reason
that.
that the questions have changed is
It's almost
obviously
leaning to the point where I think we might have to have it as an agenda item, because in the past they would ask questions in a broad nature. Are you aware of any fraud? Are there any areas of concern that you're aware of? Have you been informed of any fraud? You know, just directed, pointed questions that any one of us could easily answer, because either we were, we weren't, we heard about it, or we didn't. They're very clear, almost yes or no questions. The questions I heard today, and you can go back and double check and make sure they're read properly, but the questions I heard today were around, do we have a strong control environment? You know, and we're talking more about the controls and not our awareness of fraud, but our assessment of the internal control environment. So I'm leaning towards wanting to put an agenda item on where we as a board could take a few minutes each meeting and have a discussion. You know, maybe it begins with a presentation at one of our meetings, and then just each meeting we have a discussion so we're all aware of controls, where they are, which ones are considered effective. If we have any controls that maybe were ineffective, we could have a chat around it.
I'll review the information and then see where how we should proceed with this.
Starting January, we'll do it
Yeah.
quarterly.
The reason that the questions have changed is because Bloom Shapiro was merged or bought out by CLA, and CLA has different
Okay.
requirements.
But John, those are all good questions
Mm-hmm.
that they're asking. That's how they should be. They should have been asking those every year, because if you don't have good controls,
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, I've been involved in Sarbanes-Oxley and internal controls and whatnot. I'm very involved. I was
Right.
the manager of it in internal audit. But I agree with you, Kevin. But the thing I want is if we as a board are going to opine on, do we have a strong or weak control environment? Do we have opportunities to strengthen in some areas? Do we have effectiveness? Like you said, do we have a matrix? What do we have? How do we feel about it? If our governance is going to apply to the control environment, then I think we ought to be discussing the control environment.
exactly.
Not a problem. Some of that may be in executive session, but most of it could be done in public
I was
session.
going to say,
Right.
yeah, some of it might.
Yeah, I don't want everyone to know.
No, but
some of the
Amelia,
controls.
could we get access to their work papers? Not all the work papers, just a high level of the audit work papers, since we pay them and they're doing an audit of our town.
I
Because that
can ask
is
the
where,
question.
that's kind of what John's leaning towards too, because we need to see what they did and just to review it. Not that we're going to say, you know, they missed anything, but we want to get an understanding what they looked at. That helps to get it.
I can
for us
ask the
to-
question. I'm not sure, especially
sure they
with
can.
CLA. They have their own rules. They are considered their work papers. So,
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Let us talk to them and see what we can do
Right.
for the January meeting.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead,
almost
John.
the control environment by management, not really owned by so much by the Board of Finance. We're governance over it, but I guess that's owned by the town manager would own the control environment. And, just so now we just need to be plugged in to that control environment so that we're aware of it, have a chance to opine on it, talk about it, so that we could say, yes, we provide governance and our assessment.
Very good.
Joe, you're all set?
Yeah, I just real quick, I wanted to apologize for not being able to be there physically tonight. I'm not on a golf course in Hawaii. I'm in Connecticut, but I was just made aware that I was a close contact. I believe I could have attended with a mask on, but I thought it just made more sense to do remote. But I do apologize for not being there in light of the fact for a strategy discussion. It's always nice to be in person.
Well, I miss you. That's for sure, both of you.
I miss you, too.
I say it the way it is. But I got a lot of good help around me here. So keep me rolling.
All right, good.
Okay. Okay, we're good with that. Then we're going to go into long-range planning.
Public communications first.
I'll be down to public communications.
I
don't think we have any, right?
Anybody?
We'll go down to strategy, and I'll...
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just I know the strategy is going to be the Board of Education, but what we can do, and that's going to be a much longer conversation, so what I'd like to do is move, and let's get the Southington's bravest out of here as quickly as possible. So I would move to go to Manager's Memo 1, which is the appropriation for the ladder truck. Chief Paul, would you step up? And I know you guys are saying this is the third time you're hearing about the same thing, but as you know, this is ARP money. So so every time we do it, we come back to you again. The chief and his staff came forward with a design. The design went to the government list is Sufon, right? Sufon's on the government list.
Yes.
So the government list is Sufon, which is the trucks that we use in this case for a ladder truck, and the appropriation number you'll see in the memo. Is $1,648,986, and we get to that in a little different way. But let's have the chief talk about how the process works. And go ahead, chief.
So we've been with Suffolk now since 2012. First of all, I'd like to thank the entire board, the town manager Amelia, for all of your support. We're approaching 10 years now with the apparatus replacement program. Just a little history. Just because I've been there in the fire department for a while. Unfortunately, in years and years past, the doorbell rang, and the representative was there, and our new fire truck was on the front ramp. We've moved light years ahead, and it's thanks to all of you, Assistant Chief Heath, the town manager, and our amazing committee that was formed back in 2010. So where we are today, I'm proud to say how much work that these guys have really put into this committee. Suffolk has been our vendor since 2012. That's when we went with the engines. We are members, when I say we are, the town of Southington are members of HGAC, which is the Houston Galveston. Basically, it's a cooperative. And we are able to purchase off of that act, saving a lot of time, saving a lot of money. It is a bid process. It's a national bid process. And what we've done in the last month to design the specification prior to January 1st is save approximately 10%. When you look at 10% at nearly a $1.7 million purchase, it's a lot of money. I have spoken with the rep about an hour and a half ago. Most of the manufacturers are taking another increase. They all did July and August of this past year, a dramatic increase, and then another almost 10% or 10% plus, no matter what the manufacturers come January 1st. So this fleet committee, headed by a battalion chief and captain, have just been amazing, along with our representatives. So the issue with these trucks are the build time. So for an engine right now, we're looking at anywhere from 20 to 24 months. In our case, is a ladder. So this ladder, once we sign the contract, is a 14 to 16 month build time. Our current ladder at fire headquarters is a 2006 Pierce platform. If we go through with this deal, this is going to be a Suffolk SPH 100. It's a total redesign. It's going to be a mid-mount versus a rear mount. Rear mount is where the platform is on the back. This one's going to be a mid-mount. It's going to be much more versatile. The setup time is going to be seconds compared to minutes. It'll hold much more water. And this is, just because we went with one truck for years and years and years, basically my entire career, doesn't mean we have to stay with that. Thus why we changed manufacturers back in 2012. So with your support, we'd like to move forward. But, right now with NFPA 1901, they recommend 15 years to go from front line, which our truck right now is 15 years old. It'll be moved to secondary status, reserve, or go down to Station 3, which, as we know through your support as well, Town Manager, certainly with our Safer Firefighters starting on or around June 1st, we'll have a second ladder down there as well that we can operate. So, we'll be pushing the 2-year mark over, but that's okay. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. It's about a 150-page specification, and it's going to be a nice truck.
On the financial part, the actual number is $1,698,015.31. As the chief mentioned to you, the reason why we're coming to you sooner than either one of us thought was the fact that in January it goes up 10%. That's $100,000. Also, they're giving us an option, which is in your packet. Talking to the chief, the assistant chief, and the finance director, we're going to choose option number 4, which is that we pay 90% up front, and that saves us another $50,000 actually. We're doing that because we want to, yes, we could do 100%, but the minds put together said we got to have some kind of leverage here, so we want to keep the leverage with us. So we give them 90%. Obviously, we're covered under insurance and all that good stuff. So that's the route we want to take, and that's why the number is sitting in front of you. And $1,648,000. Budget that I submitted to you back when I did the 2 ARP presentations was 1.6. So it's a little less than the original budget. We need to answer any questions. We have both the chiefs here and Amelia.
Any questions?
Yes, quickly, are we happy with SUPTEN as a vendor in the sense that, I'll get this close, in the sense that, 10% is essentially your leverage if anything goes wrong. Could you talk briefly about how happy we are with them?
Sure. We're extremely happy. Chief Heath and I have been, basically the managers of the program for the whole fleet committee since our existence. And what we do is we look at the entire manufacturer, and whatever they produce, we really look at the service end of things, because these machines are a lot of money. They carry our valuable resources, meaning our people, number one, in our equipment, and they answer a lot of calls. We'll answer probably upwards in the entire department, upwards of 2,500 calls this year. So when we look at these pieces of equipment and how expensive they are, we really have to look at what are we going to get in the long run for service. Our local service here, who's been servicing our vehicles for decades, is nothing short of fantastic. Chief Heath, who is our operational chief, I'm not too sure he sleeps, but he answers his phone morning, noon, and night, of course, to me and to the battalion chiefs and everybody else, as well as answers calls. But when these things break, they're answered. So we look at the service end of it. Our representative is fantastic. We personally know him. We professionally know him. I sent him a text an hour and a half ago, and my phone was ringing in 10 minutes. That's the relationship that we have. So that's what we've built. It's built on professionalism and trust. And, for 10 years now, it's been wonderful. So we're going to ride that wave.
Any sense of the financial viability of the company? Obviously, you see them from a service perspective.
It's been rock solid. There's a performance bond that's built right into this, okay. So there's no issues there. He's bluntly honest with me, as well as he is with Chief Heath, is that even with that 10% or approximately 10% increase come January 1st, as he said to me tonight, he goes, Chief, if you're going to get a little bit more, I'd tell you what you're going to get, but you're not. So that 10% is just strictly price inflation. That's a lot of money.
This is the first time we've done a large amount of money up front. We've done that with the last 3, I believe.
We have.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Right, now I understand.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And can we move this up?
Yeah, we'll need a roll call vote on this right now. If you
Okay.
wish.
All right, we'll take the roll, please.
Make a motion.
I'd like
I
to make
gotta have a motion
I'd like
first.
to make a motion to appropriate $1,640,000.
Seconded.
Okay, second by Mr. Any other further discussion? We'll call the roll, please.
Sure. Mrs. Zoni?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Mr. Bedoyan?
Yes.
Mr. Pocock?
Yes.
Mr. Lebenik?
Yes.
Chairman Larry?
Yeah.
Okay, motion passes 6-0.
Thank you all.
Chief, thank you.
Thank you.
Very much, guys.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We now can go back to strategy.
Okay, we got the Board of Education. Can we bring them up also?
Up here, guys, or does it matter to you? Doesn't matter.
5.
It's up to you. I mean,
Yeah.
You got it. Here's over there. Mark, got it. Here's over there.
Hi, Steve.
Dave.
You got the experts.
Steve, you got it. It's been a long time since I've been a chairman. All nights I'm late. I had the mic covered.
You're doing fine.
You're doing a good job. It's like riding a bike, Ed.
He forgets I spent 2 years. It's been 2 years with him as chairman of the building committee.
Yeah.
Okay,
Joe or
Joe's-
John was going to take it.
yeah. I know John was ready to go. John, you on there?
Yeah, I'm here, and Joe's here, and I guess, you could start it out. You put a lot of the work into it, you and Tony.
Yeah, sure. So, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I can't.
All right, great, thanks. Okay. So we've talked about this for a number of years, and we had a workshop last week, I believe. Correct, Amelia?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we had a workshop last week. We did a little bit of work before that and a little bit of work since then. But typically heading into a budget year, what we're doing is we're in the current fiscal year and we're looking at the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. In addition to doing that this year, we've talked about this a number of times in the past, but we actually want to put it into practice this year. In addition to the 22-23 fiscal year budget, we're going to be looking from both the town side and the Board of Education side for a 23 to 24 and 24 to 25 forecast. So we're looking for a 3-year fiscal plan, which will be the upcoming year in the 2 years following. We had, put together as a board a spreadsheet that we'll be able to share, and that we'd be looking for the government and the Board of Ed to complete. And it's built, relatively in a relatively straightforward fashion. In terms of filling in four main tabs on it. We have the estimated expenditures, the revenue, we have the capital budget separate, and then it all culminates with, the overall where we can provide an estimate, and this is something obviously, Mark would be working with you and Amelia on grand list growth. And that would forecast the mill rate, obviously, for the next fiscal year, which will be what we'll be voting on ultimately, but for the 2 years after that. So from, just in terms of where we want to move as a board, for a number of reasons, we think it's important that we look beyond just this current fiscal year. And the discussion that we wanted to have tonight and why this also becomes important is, from the Board of Education side with the ESSER II ARPA funding and the non-lapsing dollars, understanding how those are going to be used over the next couple of fiscal years, for the main reason of understanding and hopefully ensuring there isn't going to be a fiscal cliff in year 3. I'll stop there and ask, John or anybody else on the board to jump in with thoughts as well, and then maybe we can dive a little bit into the conversation.
Anybody want
to? Yeah, I guess I'll just add something. One thing to what Joe said, which is three extra revenue sources, right? They've got the what's left of ESSA, the American Rescue Plan, and you've also got the non-lapsing account, which has come over from last year, right? Which is the $1 million or so usually used for minor capital. So, we just, you have those funds. They'll either be used this year or next year. I think ARP allows you to use it the year after as well. I mean,
Correct.
if you want to go into the third year beyond what we're talking about now. So we're just interested in, which slices are going where. So, for instance, obviously, we're talking COVID remediation. Which slices are going to COVID remediation programs that essentially end after a year, 2 years? They have a finite limit. And we're also wanting to know if there's any COVID remediation funds that, for various reasons, go towards regular operations, which could continue, beyond that third year, and could well become, part of that of your operations budget. The assumption being that they're there, and they'll be there next year as well. So that's what, at a very high level, that's what we're asking the Board of Education for. It's different from what we asked the town, because the Board of Finance has, line item view, so it's a slightly different thing. But it's at it's at that gross level, because you guys have, the board has the responsibility over the line item view, during the year.
Mm-hmm.
Forecasting.
I can speak to a little bit.
Go ahead. Yes,
Go ahead. Good.
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, welcome back to all four of you and the two gentlemen on the phone. I've been coming to these meetings with all of you for the last 7 years now, and it's always been a good conversation. You ask good questions. As far as the ESSER funds, the ESSER funds, ESSER 2 was a much smaller dollar amount than the ARP funds were. And so at this point right now, just a rough forecast, last time Jennifer and I talked, there's only $41,000. But that wasn't anything, even going into last year's operating budget, with the reallocation time, nobody was relying on that anyways, because we knew that targeted for certain purposes, and also there wasn't as much. The ARP funds are a different can of worms. The intentional use by the district right now has all been temporary positions that are directly related to COVID recovery. We tried to add, and I had said this when it was posed last year, our second grades are a great example of this. Those students, education was interrupted for all of them in kindergarten, and then it was certainly compromised in first grade. So we've had some students coming in as second graders this year that hadn't been in a physical brick and mortar building in 18 months during the most crucial time of adolescent development. So when you talk about early literacy and just child development in general, it's been very difficult. So one of our intentional uses was to reduce class sizes at second grade across all 8 elementary schools to 14 or less students this year. That's not something we would ever do or could continue to do beyond the pandemic, but we were able to hire additional staff to make that happen this year in second grades. We also, in working with the principals, we had what we call, and we've always done this as well, but I think it's reared its head a little more, cohorts of concern. So even in a non-pandemic situation, you may have students where there's just a cohort of students that either have behavioral mental health needs or learning disabilities that require intensive levels of support. And so those are cohorts where we try to, just in those cohorts, so it could be one specific grade at one specific school where we might intentionally reduce the class sizes in that grade level just to help the teacher manage the challenges associated with that. So those are some of the temporary.
Sorry, can I? That's an excellent thing you just, because, sorry to interrupt. Just
Yeah, sure.
Quick question. The early grades, they go down to 14 per class.
Yep.
Right? Okay, now, if the distinction between, using COVID funds for some operational things that extend beyond, as opposed to programs that end after 2 years, where does that fall in the sense of, is that, you're only going to put it in place, you've hired people, only going to put it in place for the next couple of years, we've got the money to do so, or will you think, well, that's actually a good plan. The kids did real well. Maybe we should keep this ongoing because it was successful, and that would be where you would, I think, where you would get into things like fiscal cliffs because you're
Correct.
right. So the distinction between those is really what we'd like to understand, and I think that's an excellent thing. That could go either way,
Yeah.
right? Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
Appreciate
absolutely.
that.
Another area you're reading about in the paper, you're hearing it on the news, is mental health of our students. I was just reading an article this weekend, and it finally summed it up the nicest way and the clearest way for people, because it's confusing for people what we talk about mental health, what that means. Students spent so long in isolation that they're having trouble socializing and assimilating back into, crowds, and groups. There's our Dcf referrals are up at this time right now compared to where they have been pre-COVID. I get the Dcf referrals in my office every day. If I could redact names and share what those look like, you'd be slightly concerned for what a lot of our kids in the community are going through. Our 211 calls for kids that are in crisis, having emotional distress, particularly at the high school. You see it in the way of fights, increased suspensions that might be happening. Absenteeism and truancy is higher than it's been, and then students earning credits, just completing schoolwork and getting it done, when sometimes they're being forced between two modes of learning, digital learning and in-person learning, and shifting back and forth. Some students struggle with one mode of learning, let alone when you throw two different modes of learning at them. So not only recovering academically, but helping our students to assimilate and transition back into an in-person environment successfully is where we tried to put additional social workers, school psychologists, and whatnot into our buildings as well. That was something that we had in our budget last year as a request, and the board had supported at the time as new personnel, because it's something, and I think you've read about this in the paper, there's been mental health concerns for students prior to the pandemic. It's just reared its head now during the pandemic. So it's become a priority at the state level, but in the past it was local. It was more of a local issue. And then the academic recovery for our students. We were performing fairly well. Every district in the state, across the state, saw a decline last year. That's not surprising in academic achievement, but that's our job, is to now help students make the gains and recover from that. That does require additional academic support at times in terms of specialists and interventionists. And so those are ancillary positions that, are not always easy to fill in terms of salaries. And if you're looking at classroom teachers and class sizes, and then you're looking at support staff, you have to sometimes make difficult decisions. So it's going to be a complex puzzle. I love the idea of a 3-year budget. I'm not going to lie to you, because I was equally concerned based on last year's budget what that would mean for me. When I met with Mr. Choda, I said, geez, I'm walking into the superintendent's position, and all they're asking me to do is potentially close a school, redistrict, recover from a $1.5 million deficit, and guide the district through a pandemic. I can do this. Redistricting alone can be difficult at times, We will do this. We'll work on it together. We have a great partnership and an awesome start, but it's going to be complicated, and I think it's certainly going to require a lot of collaboration back and forth. I'm absolutely excited to do this. I guess my questions around a 3-year budget would be some of the unknowns, so bargaining unit contracts and purchase services. Sometimes it's hard to forecast that because you don't know, especially coming out of a pandemic right now, what the labor contracts and the settlements are going to look like across the 8 or so bargaining units that we work with. if some of them are up for negotiations over the course of 3 years, it may be hard for me to assign a dollar amount to an expense. We can forecast and maybe make some assumptions based on current settlements, but that may be the best we can do in that area.
That's absolutely fine, Steve.
Okay.
It really is. I mean, we're not.
Hey, Steve.
asking for
Steve.
stuff.
Can I? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tony.
No, I said we're not asking for detailed level stuff. This is
Yeah.
at the high level. It really
Sure.
is. Well, obviously the first year is the budget.
Yeah.
But the next 2 years are at the high level.
Yep.
So okay. Yeah. Sorry, Joe.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no. Hey, yeah, sure. Hey, Steve, thanks a lot for the explanation. Just a couple of questions. So just when you spoke through, I think you said bringing in additional teachers,
Yep.
let's say at the second grade level to reduce class size, bringing in additional counselors, just so I'm clear, if they're, or I guess, what are the options we have, or how are those teachers brought in? And I guess I'm directly asking if it's being funded by the grant funds and the grant runs out, is it something where are they brought in on is it a temporary position? Is it a contract position that expires after a year? How are those teachers brought in, and what options do we have?
Great question, Joe. We have, so in the forum, I talked about the specialists and the interventionists that are serving in the role of academic recovery. We have 5 of those right now. Those are 5 teachers that are currently already on staff. They're built within our budget. So their voluntary reassignment is teacher on assignment. So they're adding additional intervention at the elementary level across our 8 schools. So we hired 1-year positioned teachers, 1-year contract teachers at a lower salary rate to take the classroom level positions, and the expert master teachers were doing the intervention and specialized instruction for the students that need the academic support. So there was the understanding going into it that they were 1-year positions, and there's...
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
John, you got any?
And then I think let me sorry, just follow up. So I think you mentioned, and I apologize if I'm getting the title wrong, but in terms of the additional, were you saying counselor positions that were in your original budget?
Yes.
That were cut, that you're saying are needed now due to COVID, but were needed pre-COVID?
Correct. So
okay. So in an instance like that, would that be something where, and I think that's kind of what we're getting at, is or what we will be getting at and looking for a plan, is that, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but this probably would be something you would have said, we had it in our budget, it was cut, it's back in now, and it's being funded by these grant dollars. However, and again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so tell me if I'm going too far with this. However, we said we needed them before. That's going to be our story when the grant dollars runs out. So that would roll into our normal operating budget, no longer funded by grant dollars, but we would still look to have those positions. And I'll stop after this. And I think that's what we want to understand, because that would create a fiscal cliff for us. And I think, what we're looking to get to is there going to be a cliff at all? If there is going to be a cliff, how severe is it going to be? But with that specific example right there, can you provide some more thinking on that, please?
Absolutely. So your answer is twofold. With the $1.5 million cut, where we were directed to use the ARP funds, those grant funds funded new positions. That 1.5 funded 12 current FTEs that were already in our budget. So I'm starting at a delta of 12 without any new positions. So over the next 3 years, I need to bring those 12 positions back into the operating budget. Those 12 people would have been laid off without the ARP funds when the $1.5 million cut was made. So those were not the new positions. The new positions were funded by a combination of what we call nexus tuitions. So we bill back to, I'll give an example, we bill back to Hartford Public Schools when we service students beyond the per pupil allocation we get. And we were able to take the tuition dollars that we got back from that and allocate it towards the mental health and support staff. And so that may be a strategy that we may continue with, but again, it's contingent upon what we're able to charge Hartford for services that we provide to the students. It's not a revenue source that we can depend on. It was something that we had last year that we were able to do creatively to get that staff in place. The other positions, the one-year positions, there was in the ARP funds, there was a requirement that a certain percentage had to be used, and for us it was around $820,000 for learning loss. That was a requirement of the federal funds, and that's what we targeted with the teachers on assignment, the reduced class sizes, and other such things. So it was required use of the funds, and we used it for that purpose. And then lastly is the teacher's contract. As you know, we just settled the teacher's contract, but we built in, and I was surprised but glad we were able to pull this off. We certainly needed to make a correction, if you will, to the teacher's salary grid. We've been losing teachers on the middle of the salary grid for quite some time. This is years in the making. This has probably taken 15 to 20 years to do. And you would have a teacher who could be in district for 15 plus years and they'd be on step 7, which is about $54,000 with a master's after 15 years. So they'll go next door to Bristol and get paid. And so you invest in this staff and they're highly qualified, but we're not paying. We definitely built money into the grid using some of the ARP funds so that it didn't come from the operating budget or won't come from the operating budget. And I projected that out over 3 years, so that we could gradually put that money back on the grid and offset the expense to the town. So what was just about an 11% increase will actually only cost the town 9%, 9% change over 3 years, which is actually a lower settlement rate than most contracts across the state are coming in right now. So I used some of the ARP funds to help with the teacher's contract and retain staff and recruit highly qualified staff. I used some for learning loss, and I used some for mental health support. And then lastly was what we used at the direction of the council.
Okay. So when you everything you just said,
yes,
the way you broke it up, the dollar amounts,
yep,
and all that, because that's the important things that we're looking.
While you're here, the capital is actually obviously also important, although it's obviously going to show itself on the town side with the debt service. But you'll be having the biggest hit for our capital in the next 2 or 3 years, obviously, whatever it decided to do with the schools remediation. So is it possible to give us a sense of that as well? It doesn't have to be part of this spreadsheet or anything, but it will give us an indication of how much it's going to affect the debt service. Because the numbers, I've only seen the provisional 3 scenarios. And, well, they're, how can I phrase this? Pricey. So if you could give us a sense of that during this budget process of how you're doing with that, and if you see which scenario you're going to move ahead with, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
And the second thing is, and I bring this up because you mentioned it, about closing a school. If you do close a school, that cuts, what does that cut out of the operations budget? And obviously that wouldn't happen, it wouldn't happen today. It would happen next couple of years if you did it. It'd be interesting to know that as well. Okay.
John, you have anything further? I know you're listening.
Yeah, just first thing, I just want to say thank you to everyone for being there. I could not be there tonight, but I have to commit to the meeting that we are going to have with the superintendent. That I think the chair and vice chair have been invited of the town council and the board of finance, and we will schedule that as soon as Joe and I are out of the woods on the COVID exposures. So we thank you for being here. And back to Joe's original point, and a lot of everyone else's, Tony's and everyone else's, we do need, when we sit down to really speak about the budget, is to understand that cliff. And I'm hearing that a cliff has been created, and it does exist. It doesn't appear that it's going to be absorbed or avoided at this point, because the 1.5 million cut was made up by the grant funds, and we have to sort that. And that's Joe's main point, is how much of stuff today, whether it was a town council cut or wherever it came from doesn't quite matter. But if we are using grant funds to fund something that's going to extend beyond the end of the grant, we have to clearly know what that is, why it occurred, and how and why we need to address it going forward. And then, to the point of the school renovations and redistricting, yes, a piece of that will affect the operating budget of education, and a piece of that goes on to the general government's debt load. And it's two separate pieces. When we look at it as a Board of Finance, we look at it in totality. Its effect on the mill rate, its effect on the town. I know when Board of Ed may be looking at it, they may say, okay, yes, we're going to renovate this, that, and the other thing, but the cost of that renovation is going to sit in general government. It's going to be bonded, and all the costs of initiating those bonds and paying back the principal and interest at what we call the debt service will all fall on the town side and not necessarily get mingled at all in the education operating budget. So we have to look at all that, but Board of Ed may not look directly at that. So I think we all know that as we keep it in mind. But it is definitely a consideration. And then Tony's last point, I'm also, we don't need to know now until plans are finalized, but at some point with redistricting and remodeling the schools, at some point we have to know the effect on the Board of Ed operating budget of all that. So yes, so I'm just repeating what everybody else said. But biggest thing to us is really, in other words, the highest level is separating COVID out from education pre-COVID, and I know that's tricky because Superintendent Medancy, you're saying that there's the emotional issues, there's educational catch-up issues, there's social issues, there's all kinds of issues that COVID has brought us that are either going to be not fixed at all and are going to linger with the kids right on through, or they're going to be fixed by general operating fund money, or they're going to be fixed by COVID, we'll call it COVID money, COVID grants, and we need to, as a board, we need to see that. What we're not going to be able to fix, what we are, won't call it fix, maybe address is the better word, what we're going to be able to adequately address, what we're not going to be able to address, and how we're going to address it. Do the grant funds alone address it, and then it's all completed by the time the grant funds end? Or do the grant funds not address it because some of them were used to cover general operations, where the general operations budget was cut, and the grant funds stood in for the general operations funds? And we need to, I don't want to say straighten out the spaghetti. I won't say unscramble the egg, but we need to straighten out the spaghetti when we're preparing the charts and the discussions to walk the Board of Finance through what education looks like going into and coming out of the pandemic.
Absolutely.
Get all that.
Just so you know, obviously, this conversation is not new to the two of us.
No.
We've been talking about this for months.
Right.
Yeah.
We knew this was going to be the situation. The chair of the council and I have had this conversation. I know Steve has already met with the chair of the council and the vice chair, I believe. So these conversations are going on. This is not new. There's no magic to it. It's going to be work and probably a little bit of pain too. So we're working on it.
Well, the nice part about it is we're seeing everybody working together here. So that makes a big difference. And our board is, and I don't have anything else.
Oh,
Go ahead, John.
I'm sorry, Ed. I just had one thought, and I thought I had a pause there. We would be remiss if we purely focused on the dollar side, even though that's what goes into our model. We work with numbers, but I think our board is fully committed to the human side too. That these numbers that we put towards education, whether it be $100 million and the federal government comes and adds to it there's a human side to this too, and the main goal is educating the kids academically, socially. I don't know the proper word that you use in education, but getting people from child to adult ready to go into the adult world, whether that's college or trade school or life in general, and bringing the whole person through the education spectrum. I don't want to leave out that this board is concerned with the product we're producing and the human side too, even though we talk so much on the numbers side. That's all.
Okay, good.
Okay.
We're good.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for being here. And
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thank you.
very much. Appreciate you.
And it's the first year for the operations and business director.
Should take that all down.
Just like nothing.
Just get a draft me tomorrow morning, 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Well, I did write on this next page what's the timing of the request.
I don't think there was
Thank
one.
you.
Well, it's going to be with the budget process, right?
Right.
You want the budget.
Yeah,
Year
sorry.
one's going to be the budget. Year 2 and 3 will be the estimates.
The
that we're talking
the
about.
forecasting.
Forecast, yeah.
And we'll talk about it all during the workshops. So.
That was actually
It's
approved.
not
Was that to be
tomorrow.
approved tonight, right? The 2022 budget.
The meetings,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, perfect.
correct.
So we'll have those.
You already have those. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Great.
So basically, that was our first budget talk right there.
Yeah. Thank you very
Can't
much.
get much better than that.
All right, take care.
And I think you all received a copy of the first salvo, of course, is my letter to the department. You all received that already. So the process has begun.
Right.
The circus
Thank you.
has begun.
Good night, guys.
All right.
Good night.
That brings us to the consent agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. And, under A, it's 7,006. Oh.
Sorry, could I just to close this subject off? Go spreadsheet out. There's obviously. Do you want to send it out to everybody?
I will.
Yeah. Okay. And that needs-
I will, and I think you one thing I'll say. I think, and Tony, please correct me if you think I'm wrong here, but the way the modifications we made, I believe they'll still work, but there'll be, I envision a separate spreadsheet or more behind it that the Board of Education puts together with the additional detail.
Yeah.
But then we can take that and put it in the appropriate categories in our model for the purposes of accomplishing what we needed to accomplish. But clearly, just listening to their explanation tonight, we'll obviously need their information, their spreadsheets that we can then feed into ours.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. It's for the police department special ops grant appropriation of 7620. I need a motion.
Make a motion to approve the.
Together.
Do you want to do me? One at a time, that's fine if you have to.
Yeah,
The consent agenda can be done together.
We can do it.
I can-
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as a group
Yeah, there
for
we go.
7,620 police department and 6,148 for the fire department.
Second. Oh,
Okay,
sorry.
we got a second?
It's okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I keep forgetting you guys, I'm sorry.
I thought you said you missed me.
No,
Well, not that much.
I didn't miss you. I do miss you. I miss both of you.
Not that much. Wow.
Manager's memo.
We just finished that, Mr. Chairman, and thank you
And
on
we
behalf
did
of the
that,
fire
and-
department
Okay,
and myself. And
everybody's favorite.
John, you want to? Oh, John can't do it.
Yeah, John can't do it.
John, you got to at least.
Before you do that, obviously, on behalf of Amelia and myself, we may see you between now and the holidays, but if we don't,
Yes.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And,
Yes.
Yeah, same to everybody.
I was going to say that.
we're moving on to our next budget year, so
I know.
see you all then.
Wonderful.
Go from there.
Motion to
Same to you
adjourn?
guys out there.
Yes.
Second that motion to adjourn.
Yeah, second. You got a second to it. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, guys. Have a good holiday.
Thank
Merry
you.
Christmas. All the good things.
Take care.
All right.
Bye, guys.
All right.
Great.
Take
Hey,
care.
best luck with the COVID front, guys.
Oh.